we're going to jump into this. Again, welcome. My name is Will Watrous from StructureM, and we've set up these regional workshops all over the country because it's such a crazy time. We've got election stuff, we have COVID, and a pretty crazy environment right now. And we wanted to bring some sense and stability to the environment for contractors because there's a lot to navigate. You know, some contractors over the last 6 months have actually been killing it. They are having just banner years, and there's a lot of other contractors out there that are struggling. And what we did is put together this workshop, bringing in some very experienced veteran business owners, contractors, serial entrepreneurs who have been there, done that, and have been successful during this season and want to give you their tips and advice, but then also answer the specific questions. If you remember, when you registered for the workshop, you answered a few questions. And so we've actually designed the content right around the very questions that you had asked. So it's the whole idea here is just to add a ton of value. This is not a sales pitch. We are not here to try to pitch products and services and all that kind of stuff. This is about adding value. We really appreciate the partnership that we have with James Hardy. We've been partnering with them for many years. And I do want to take a minute. I'm sharing my screen here. We did a workshop previously, and at the end of it, we did all this great content. And then a few companies were saying, so what do you guys actually do? Who are you? And so I just want to take a minute to let you know what we're about. If you go to StructureM.com, this is our website, but click on the services. That's probably the best way to get an idea of what we do. We have this growth accelerator program that increases revenue 15 to 50% per year. We're privileged to work with some of the largest and most successful contractors, including a lot of James Hardy Elite Preferred contractors all over the country. And so sorry, I read the chat and it threw me off. So we've been applying this method for companies all over for about 8 or 9 years now. And in a nutshell, it's everything from brand messaging, websites, SEO, digital ads, social media, your reputation, your CRM marketing piece, and reporting, and then coaching. And that's what I think is a unique value of what we do. Is it's not just about the leads, it's about what you do with the leads. How well is your sales team closing leads? And operationally, are your workflows sequenced? Are you efficient? And then, as Jeff's going to speak to here in a moment, are you keeping more money? Are you putting more money in the bank instead of just owning a job, as they say? So that's what StructureM is about. As I mentioned, we've got some fantastic people on the call today, so I'll just do a brief introduction. I'll introduce them a little bit more as we go. But Bruce, yours truly here on the left, Bruce Dell is the COO of StructureM, and he oversees a team of marketers who specialize in the contracting industry. So everything from digital ads to websites to messaging to email campaign, all the stuff that should be done. He oversees a team that does it, and he's been consulting with companies and contractors for about 8 years. Hillary Leal is the account executive here at StructureM, has also about 8 years in the sales and marketing space, and has a lot of experience specifically in content marketing and sales outreach and all kinds of great stuff. David Galati, who's going to kick things off here in a moment, has been in the home improvement space for over 2 decades, has grown multiple multi-million-dollar companies. And then Jeff Prager has been a CFO for over 40 years and also started, ran, and sold multiple multi-million-dollar companies in the contracting, construction, home improvement space. So that's who's speaking today. I do want to just, again, give a shout out to Brian. Brian, thank you for hopping on today. I'd like to just give you a minute to speak up and just say hello and any other thoughts you'd like to share before we kick off.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm participating on behalf of Sean Lichtenvoort. Well, him and I work together in the Philadelphia metro market. My role is regional sales manager. He is on vacation right now, which is well-deserved. But I just want to take the time to sincerely thank all the contractors that are on this call. We've all had it pretty challenging over the last 6 to 8 months, but you guys have been relentless every single day, waking up and putting on your work boots. And just want to let you know that you're appreciated. And we thank you on behalf of all the manufacturers and suppliers out there. We've been partnered with StructureM for quite some time now. And I believe that there's some things that they could help you improve your efficiencies to drive profitability and ultimately reduce stress flowing into calendar year 2021. So we really appreciate the time. We know you're busy, and we appreciate all your grit.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Spoken like a true Philly guy right there. That's Philly grit right there.
There you go. Just like our football team currently.
Hey.
Yeah, don't hate what you got behind here. You see the Christmas tree? So we don't have to go there. But anyway, it's okay. I'm getting off on the bad. Getting off on the wrong foot. It's all. it's okay. I spent 3 years in Bucks County, so and met my wife while I was in Philadelphia. So I got nothing but love for Philly. Lots of friends down there.
Definitely your better half.
Amen to that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Brian. Great to, again, we really appreciate James Hardy, the partnership we've had there. What I love about James Hardy is they do things right. You guys know that they are a class act, top notch. And case in point is just the production, the manufacturing that they've been keeping up with. A lot of manufacturers are they behind? And it's creating problems for everybody. But Hardy has been staying right on top, running the factories like 24/7 to stay up with production and to keep the materials in hand, which is just awesome. It goes a long way. It speaks a lot about the company. So, all right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, Dave, so that you can share yours. And I want to introduce David Bellotti. As I mentioned, Dave's been in the home improvement space for over 20 years. He has a ton of experience at the C level of organizations that are growing quickly. He's been over marketing and sales and operations, leadership development, including a $30 million home improvement company that he grew 350% in 4 years. And he's literally helped hundreds of home improvement companies. It's not an exaggeration through the organizations he's been a part of, as well as the franchising. He's got a lot of franchising experience, helping franchises scale up. So, Dave, we're looking at your big picture of a sand mountain there, just so you know. And so, David, one last thing, Dave, before you kick off, he has the part of his services are the CEO Coach to Scale program. So he really specializes in helping companies grow faster and more profitably. He deals with a lot of head trash that owners have to work through in order to grow successfully, and can really speak to a lot of facets of your company as well. So Dave, go ahead, jump on, and let's do it. Dave, can you hear us?
All right, sorry. I jumped the gun. I thought I was unmuted. Well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time today. As Will said, I've been in your shoes. I've lived the life. I know really all aspects of the pain points that founders, CEOs, owners in home improvement face. And so part of this is really coming at this from a peer approach. And, one of the things that I really like to focus on when I work with home improvement contractors is the integration between sales and production operations. There's generally an inherent disconnect that exists in organizations where sales and operations, installation, service, they're always at odds. They're always fighting. And so part of that is we work to build a culture of mutual respect, collaboration, understanding that everybody needs each other, and there's a level of the company will only rise as high as the lowest ship in the harbor, right? And so the goal is to have, as the tide rises, everything rides. So some of the questions that we get, and I'm going to just fly over a few questions on the sales side and a few questions up. Oh, what's up?
Hey, Dave, we're looking at an empty screen. I just didn't know if you knew that.
Okay, sorry. Yep, is that it better now?
That's the one.
All right, I've got dual monitors so I'm going to be looking away from my screen. So I'm just wanted to let you guys know that. So I think it's important to understand that staffing is a big issue right now. And so we're going to talk about sales staff and we're going to talk about production staff really as two separate things, but there's a lot of this that's philosophical across your organization. All right, so the biggest thing that I want to stress around staffing is a mindset that I've seen so many home improvement contractors take, and it's really the thing that gets you into trouble, and it actually prevents you from scaling. So my company, Scale, it's all about helping companies to scale, and scale is not just about revenue. A lot of times we think, well, I'm going to grow and become this business. No, it's about scaling effectively, which ultimately leads to profitability. The last thing that you want to do is grow your business and make less money, right? The goal is to grow your business, make more money, and have it be worth more when you go to potentially sell it, right? So that's really what this is all about. So part of this is there has to be a culture where you're, as an owner, the highest value activities, some of the highest value activity that we can do as an owner is be a brand ambassador for your company. And I'm sorry, I've got kids that work out of the home and I got my printer going. And so I apologize in advance for some of the distractions we're having here. But the reality is, we've got to have a culture that focuses around building bench strength constantly. And what that means is you always have to be in hiring mode. You always have to be in a mode where you're looking to build your team, even when you don't need to hire somebody right away. All right. So for instance, if you have a scenario where you feel like you've got plenty of sales people to run the leads that you have, the temptation is that you don't necessarily need to hire a salesperson. Well, I would argue that that is actually the best time to hire a salesperson. Why? Because you're going to have three different categories of salespeople. You're going to have top performers that are going to be the top 2 or 3. You're going to have mid performers that'll be the mid 3 or 4 or 5, and then you have low performers. Okay. So the goal constantly in any sales organization, whether you have 1 or 2 or 10 or 20, is to always be replacing the bottom 20% of your sales team. Why? Because you lose money on them and you're never going to make money on them. Okay. It's one thing to have somebody go from a mid to a high performer. That comes with coaching, intentionality, all of those things that you do to build a business. But there's always people on a sales team that can be replaced. And so it's important to understand that that you've got to be always constantly building a bench. The same thing holds true with production. You've got to have the ability to have production people on a bench. You've got to constantly be recruiting. You've got to constantly look, hey, what are my competitors doing? If you use subcontractors, right? You got to constantly be looking at potential subcontractor crews that can happen. I'm sorry, it's the worst time for this to happen. Okay, I get it. The issue here is we've got to be able to focus on building a culture of recruiting, of training, and accountability. All right, so I'm going to go to the sales staff. So how do we build an onboarding plan for the sales staff? Well, first of all, you've got to have a program that you're actually using and following. So you've got to have a manual, a training manual. And so if you don't have that, you need to get one. And I'm not talking about just, here's the sales book, go ride with Joe for a week, good luck. A lot of that happens, right? Or, hey, go out to visit a crew for a couple of days, see how we do the work. Let me know how it goes, good luck. There has to be somebody in your organization, whether it's you, whether it's somebody in your sales team, whether it's an administrator, that can actually walk a salesperson through a structured onboarding plan. That includes acclimation to the company. What does that mean? Do they have a computer or a laptop, iPad, whatever it is? Do they have the software they need? All the logins? Can they navigate your basic operating system? Do you use Google Workspace? Do they understand how to use that? Do you use Microsoft? Do they understand Office 365? Do they understand the basic stuff? The assumption that we make a lot of times is, well, they're a professional, they'll figure it out. Okay, they may, but a lot of times they may not. Then we got to look at our CRM and how do they understand how to navigate the CRM? So all of that stuff has to be done up front before any selling gets done. Why? Because they have to be comfortable with those things. Otherwise, those things become hindrances and roadblocks and sources of frustration, so that even a top performing salesperson can get very, very frustrated because they don't understand how to use the tools. So we can't make that assumption that they will know the basic things, because we don't know what they know. So part of that too is, as you're hiring and vetting, you've got to be asking those questions. And so the biggest temptation that happens is that the home improvement in the home improvement world is that people see, whoa, this guy was a top performer somewhere else. He's going to be a top performer with me. Well, he may or may not be, because you don't know how that other company ran their organization to determine what the effectiveness of that will be with you. If it was the wild, wild west over there, and it was all about just bringing in roadkill off the street and installing it if you could, versus a structure that you may have about quality, integrity, and processes and system, that person will fail miserably. Why? Because they don't sell into a systematic approach. They just find whoever can write a check and that's it. And so you can't always look by the resume, multi-million this and that. So you've got to understand that you've got to understand who you're hiring, and then you've got to create a replicatable system where they get onboarded prior to even going out and running any leads. And then even at that case, you've got to, once they start running leads, which could be anywhere from a week to a month, depending on how comfortable they get on that base piece, then you've got to monitor and meter those leads. You're not going to go out and give them a full schedule of leads right away. You're going to see how they're working through, not just how am I handling and closing the sales, but am I following the work process and the dispositions and the follow-up and logging everything in CRM and proper things that are going on. And you've got to have checks and balances on that. So before you can let them run free and go out and run a full load of leads, all that stuff's got to be in place. And so you really got to get intentional, okay? And that really focuses on the training. So if you're a company where you have a sales organization, so you have some sales support, a sales manager, administrative support, HR, any of the kind of the layers in your organization, then they need to be a part of the sales training. Just because they're not salespeople doesn't mean they're not going to be a part of the sales training. Now, if it's a smaller company and it's a little thinner and you as the owner have to step in, then you need to look at, again, some of the highest value activity that you can do as an owner in this case is invest in your people. And so if you don't have people to invest in them, then you ultimately have to invest in them, but somebody has to invest in them. So one of the things that I see, it's a mindset, it's a terrible mindset in home improvement contractors, is this idea that training is an evil thing that has to be gone through as quick as possible and got out of the way, versus the most critical thing to set the people I hire up for success. And so training is an investment. It's not an expense, and it's not a necessary evil. And you've got to get a culture that's set up that will allow them to be better trained. So better training starts with a proper understanding of what it is, and then the proper investment from the company. So whether or not you have a 300-page manual that everything is spelled out, or just a paper clip with 10 pages, that's immaterial. What's important is to understand that you're investing in your sales team, and that the ROI is the layer of not just, hey, I'm closing deals, but I'm selling the right deals at the right price. I'm synchronizing with production. I'm not selling hot dogs at a hamburger stand. I'm working through things that allow me to be a part of the team. All right. So that's the SaaS stuff. Another question that we get a lot is a follow-up question. So one of the things that we hear a lot is that, hey, my sales team, they're running leads and they're not following up, and how do I get them to follow up more? Well, there's a couple of things. First and foremost, you have to have salespeople not run too many leads. This is the biggest temptation that happens, is throw as many leads at a salesperson as you can, because you'd rather give a salesperson more than they can handle than hire another salesperson to run those leads. Because again, all those other stuff we talked about is so hard, it's complicated. So what happens is you get a diminishing rate of return on those leads, because they can't properly follow up. They can't invest the time. They can't even run the lead. The sit should be 2 to 3 hours, where they're leaving in 45 minutes because they got to get on to the next sit because they're rushing around. So part of that is making sure. Now, I'm going to say something that may shock you. The ideal, and this is what I found in dealing with hundreds of salespeople over the years, the ideal sweet spot for 95%, and I'm not saying it's 100%, there are some freaks of nature out there that can go beyond that. The ideal sweet spot where you maximize your ROI, and I'll tell you what ROI is in a second on sales, because it's not gross sales, it's not closing percentage, it's the thing called ADL. The sweet spot is between 10 and 15 leads a week for a home improvement salesperson. So the idea that you're going to run 30, 40, 50 leads a week, if you're doing that with your salespeople, you'll never get them to follow up, and you'll never see what they actually can do. All right. Home improvement sales is part art, is part science, and you've got to give the salespeople and set them up the right time to succeed. A couple of statistics. The closing percentage for, and this is stuff that's been done across industries, across different verticals. If a home improvement salesperson can get to 3 hours in the home with the customer where they're engaged for 3 hours, so it's not an arm wrestling match for 3 hours, it's an engagement through a systemized sales process where the salesperson is presenting a consultative approach. They're taking the customer shopping to buy their services. There's engagement, there's excitement, there's demonstration, there's all sorts of things that go on in that. The percentage of closing goes up dramatically to the point where you significantly have the person that can get to that point will close the most. All the top performers I ever knew in home improvement sales, and I know that's their sweet spot, the 3 hour mark. And we're talking people $3-4 million in home improvement sales annually with $5,000-$6,000 ADLs. So the ADL is the key metrics, guys. All right. So it's a function of closing percentage times average sale. That's your ADL. All right. If you're not using ADL to measure salespeople, you're using the wrong metrics. So what does that mean? A lead, when we talk about a lead in this term, it's a sit. Anytime a salesperson knocks on a door or now steps back and texts, whatever it is, anytime they enter the house, that's a lead now. That's a sit. So whether they present price, whether they do a demo, no demo, that's a lead. All right. From there, it's on them. We've got them in the door. Every time they run, that's a lead. And so let's use some simple math. All right. If I give a salesperson 10 leads, they run 10 leads a week, and they generate $20,000 in sales that week, then the ADL, 20,000 divided by 10, is $2,000. So every lead that they run, they generate $2,000 in revenue. All right. Now, that's generally like the lowest. Like if they're in home improvement, if you're doing less than that, you really shouldn't be in sales. That's the baseline. That's where you start at entry level, and then it goes north from there. Okay. A good, healthy home improvement company, again, with an average sale of anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 per ticket, is somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000. That's the sweet spot. But here's what you know is true. The more revenue that's generated per lead, the lower cost that lead actually costs. So your marketing costs are reduced. And then the more money you actually have to invest, you can invest in marketing and generate more leads. So the sales team, when you measure ADL, actually has the ability to help you generate more marketing lead. It gives you more marketing horsepower. The other thing that it does is it allows you to look at salespeople differently. I would rather have 10 salespeople running 10 leads, generating $30,000 a week in sales, than 5 salespeople running 20 leads a week, generating $55,000 a week in sales each, right? Why? Because my ADL goes from 2,500 to 3,000. All right. It's all about how much you make per lead. And if you pay salespeople, drawing commission, it's all going to wash out anyway. You're investing whatever it is, 8 to 12% of your revenue in your cost of sales. It doesn't matter how that works out, right? So if you've got good salespeople that are properly trained and equipped, and you have them run the right amount of leads, they can actually generate more revenue on less leads, have more time to follow up. And that's how they close more deals. Because you're not going to close all your leads on a one call close. You're not going to. So if you have the ability and bandwidth in your day to do a professional follow-up, email, phone call, touching base, revisits, resets, whatever that looks like, come back to the showroom for a demo, whatever that looks like, if they don't have the time to do that, they never will. So the number one thing is you got to give them time to do that. And you got to measure by ADL, and you got to stop giving salespeople so many leads. All right, I know that's a mouthful, but here's the deal. If I had one lead to run that would save my company, I would not give it to the guy that has the highest closing percentage. I would give it to the person that has the highest ADL. Why? Because I want the most revenue in return for that lead. And that's what ADL does. So if you're not measuring ADL, it can also be called average dollar per sit. There's all sorts of different vernacular that sum up that same formula. But that's the key to getting more out of your sales team. Any question on that, on what I just said before I go over to production? No questions? All right, so that was either good or everybody's like, who is this guy and why is he talking? So either one of those things, we're good. All right, next, operations, production, and staff. So the biggest question, and again, this is getting back to hiring, and I want to reference what I said about hiring because the same thing holds true here than it did in that. You've got to build a bench. You've got to go out. The biggest way for an installation is go see what your top competitors are doing. Go follow them around on job sites. Like literally, you want to, if they're using subcontractors, you want to be able to see who the best of the best is. So part of this it involves not just, I'm going to put an ad out when I need it, but I'm going to go out and proactively build the bench so that when I need help, I'm going to be able to get ahead of it. And as an owner, it's a super high value activity that you can do. I'm going to continually build the bench. The other thing that you want to be able to do, and this gets back to training, is if you train your crews and you build a bunch of installers that work under the foreman, and they have like a vision of what this can look like, and you provide a career path for them, then you're going to continually be able to promote from within to a certain degree. Not every laborer is going to be a foreman, but you'll be able to build a culture where there's promotion from within, and you're building people that are going to stay and stick around for a long time. All right. So that's important to understand. We want to make sure that we understand there's a culture where people want to do it. The other piece of this is you've got to compensate them well. All right. So here's the thing. This could be a big idea for some of you, and this is something that I've experienced firsthand the power of it. We want to incentivize laborers just like we incentivize salespeople. Sorry, I just had to yell at my dog who's scratching at the door. This has been a challenge for me. Will tell you I usually don't get hit with the kids and the dog all at once. But you want to think, so here's the big idea. Production is a pay-per-performance model just like sales is, okay? And what this means is each of you in your industries will have a certain percentage of labor that's the sweet spot. That's the number you really need to get to be profitable, right? Because if labor's too high, it eats away at your profitability. So the goal is to find out what that number is in an ideal scenario, and that's where you're working out of. Then you're going to bring people on and you're going to pay them a reasonable hourly wage. You're not going to overpay them hourly. You're going to bring them in at a reasonable hourly wage. And what you're going to tell them is, this is the foreman, that we have a bonus program in place that allows you to earn significant income beyond the minimum hourly wage that you'll make, your hourly wage, if you hit a certain labor percentage of the job. So in the case I worked in with 13, 15, 16, 18, 20%, depending on what industry you're in. But the goal is to lay that out there and say, if you beat that number, which we will show you that you can, you get to own the rest of that profitability. Well, you're saying, well, Dave, why would we do that? Well, because it's in your best interest to do that. If I could tell you that you could have fixed labor costs, you'd be like, wow, that's amazing, right? Now, I'm talking about in-house crews. I'm talking about people that you control. The subs, it's the same way. You're going to pay them a percentage, whatever, but you don't have the quality control. You don't have the ability to kind of manage that. I'm talking about people that you want to hire, like 4 that are going to be a part of your team, all right? And so what happens is you go through and you do and I just did this with a client. We realized their labor cost was like 23%. We got it down to 16%. And we did it what we realized was there was an average waste of 10 hours a week per crew times 3 guys, 30 man hours a week of waste. Why? They were coming in, they were loafing around. They weren't loading. Why? Because their hourly wages. I'm on the clock. I don't care. There's no incentive for me to move fast. There's no incentive. And then you start peeling that back, and then you talk about quality and quality control. And then every step off the truck. Here's how to maximize every step you take. Next thing you know, these guys go from making $45,000, $50,000 a year to $80,000 a year, like that. In the basement waterproofing business, there are foremen that work for Connecticut Basement System, the company that I ran, that make $150,000 a year. Foreman, installation foreman. Went from $15,000 to $40,000 a week in installations per crew, 2-man crew. I'm just telling you, the jackhammer seems to move a lot faster. The buckets seem to move a lot more. Those pumps are going in quicker, and they're 5-star reviews. Why? Because you're treating them like sales. You're saying, here's an opportunity for you to make money. If you do that, you will have people that stay forever, okay? And you'll have people that want to come work for you. So you got to have, this is how you hire and retain and recruit anybody in your organization. Laborers, project managers, installers, salespeople. Show them the path, train them, and then incentivize them to win with you. And that's how you build and scale your business, right? Because turnover kills you. Turnover is the killer in your business. If you don't have turnover and people are good, they're quality, and they deliver the work every day, That's your key to success. If you're constantly churning and you can't keep up with it, you'll never get ahead. All right, lastly, and this is hitting certain industries. Now, I do want to give kudos to James Hardy. As far as manufacturing goes, I would say by far, there's nobody doing a better job than James Hardy right now in shortages. There isn't. We have window and door clients that are hurting badly. Now, windows and doors, obviously, a lot of raw materials. They need to come together, need to be manufactured. We have one client that there's a 20-week backlog for window installations. Okay, that's significant, right? That's dangerous on multiple levels, right? Because especially if it's a specialty item that needs to be ordered, where you're taking a little bit of deposits, you're outlaid, you still got your operating costs, you gotta get through the month. That's a cash flow nightmare. So we're living this right now with some clients. So here's a couple of key pieces from a sales perspective. Instead of offering at the table that kind of preferred same day discount or preferred customer discount that a lot of folks will offer, that 5 or 10% discount to get them to close there, what you do is you present that, you change that up, and you present that as kind of a COVID-19 supply chain disruption discount. And what you're doing is you're having a conversation up front that will inherently build sales resistance, because people don't like to wait for that long to tie up their money or whatever. So part of that is, if you're experiencing those things, you need to have an honest conversation with the client. It's not an excuse. It's, here's what's going on in our industry. Here's how this works, Mrs. Smith. And this is currently where we are. But you do understand that there's a lot of unknowns in our world right now, especially as we head, it looks like it's getting darker before it's getting lighter. We want to be upfront with you. And so there's going to be some volatility and some variability around our installation. We want you to rest assured that we're going to be with you every step of the way. We're going to communicate proactively and let you know. But as of now, this is where we are from an installation standpoint. And this is potentially where we'll be when we get with you. So what we're trying to do is we want to have our clients get in line as quick as possible, and that we can do what we need to do to properly facilitate this in the most timely fashion. At the same time, we understand this is inconvenient for our clients. So we're offering this COVID-19 discount for folks that are ready to move forward, so that we can share in that and let them know that we care about their business and we want to move forward. How does that sound, right? That kind of thing, a little quick role play. But that's the biggest piece, is build in a little bit of that discount, change it. You're going to give it somewhere anyway, and position it in a way so that Mrs. Smith gets that. Now, we know that buyers can be liars and they forget things along the way, right? And so part of that is 2-3 months goes by and you already told them it's a 5-month backlog, in this case, very extreme. But part of that now is to go ahead and reference what Mrs. Smith, we know, we get it, and we know you're feeling it. But you remember, that's part of the conversation we had when we talked about it, that these things were occurring and we were up front. And as a result, we also gave you a discount on that, right? Remember? And so what you're doing is you're doing that refresher, you're calming them down. And as long as you're being good in your communication, you'll be fine. So that's number one. The other piece of this is really getting to the point where you're being very agile and flexible from an installation standpoint. Meaning, you're going to have your schedules, right? And you're going to have everything set by chronological, first one in, first one out kind of thing. But you've got to be very nimble and agile, especially if you have multiple product lines, and potentially be able to move crews around as you need to get the first stuff that's coming into the warehouse out and installed. And you also have to let your customers know in advance that the installation dates can be very fluid. So as you're getting close and you know that, hey, we're within that window over the next few weeks, you're constantly communicating, say, hey, it could be any day now. Are you good to go? Hey, if we can get out there on Thursday, are we good to go? I know we're on the calendar for next Tuesday. Can we do that? And really allow the customer to understand that we're trying to serve as many customers in the best way as possible. And with the unknowns around these material shortages and ebbs and flows of what we have, we're asking that they be flexible in those things. And again, it comes to proactive communication. The other thing is, if you've got this is the last piece of it, if you've got a crazy backlog and you know that going in, you're going to have some cash flow issues. Jeff's going to talk a little bit about this, in his piece. You've got to start minding the ship a little bit. It's great to have, wow, we've got all this money that's coming in and we had a record sales months, right? Because you're generating all that, but the cash can shrink quickly. You've got to be very frugal. So in this case, with this one client, he was always going to make some additional investments and go on all of that. And it's not that he doesn't have the money in the long term to do it, or he doesn't need it. Of course, he needs it to part of scale, but we put that on pause and we're not doing any unnecessary things that don't affect the ability for us to execute the business. So we're peeling back probably 20, 30,000 a month in operating expenses that are unnecessary going in to the winter just in case. And so you got to prepare, yourself financially, even though you've got, in this case, he's got almost $3 million worth of backlog, where a traditional backlog for him would be 200,000. And so exponentially greater. The other thing is he's called his bank. He's leveraged those relationships. They are seeing his receiver. They understand where he's at, because he may need a few $100,000 to get through February or March. All right, I'm not going to steal Jeff's thunder, because I know he talks a lot about this and he's way more of an expert than I am. Any questions? Sorry, I went a little long. I got in a bit of a roll, and the dog and the kids distracted me a bit. So
that's great. Yeah, there's a couple. One referring to the incentivizing of the foreman, a bonus program.
Yeah.
Does that mean the subs or employees actually know the price of the job?
Yeah, 100% full transparency. Here's what we generated on the sale. Here's our cost per square. Here's our square footage. Here's our whatever it is. 100%. Yeah, because what you're doing is you're getting them. The salespeople know what they sold it for, and so part of that is they know exactly, and then they can do the math. Okay, X% of this. If I know we beat this, this is what it is. And the foreman gets excited because he's doing the math on what he is. Now, here's the deal. There's some jobs that are really good and some jobs that aren't. Part of the deal is they understand they take the good with the bad, right? There's going to be jobs they may not bonus on, okay? But they can rest assured that they're not going to make less than their hourly. But they're still incentivized to get on to the next job, because even if they're not going to bonus on that job, they want the next job which they can bonus on. And you put QA in there. They're surveying, they're making sure there's quality. If they're go backs on a job, they lose the bonus opportunity. So they're not just rushing in and out. There's quality assurances associated with that. And I was always excited when foremen would get big bonuses, because I know one thing. We're not paying more on our labor than we should, and we're getting velocity. We're installing more work. We're generating more revenue for the company with the same amount of labor.
Awesome. Brian from Hardy, do you suggest changing product offerings to items stocked locally?
Yeah, that's a good idea. If the quality is there, right? So we never want to substitute out and misrepresent kind of what we are, right? Because if it's Home Depot stuff and it's not normally Home Depot stuff, then we've got to be realistic about that. We've got to be real about that. And to me, again, you'll hear a lot about transparency with me. If you work with me, I'm all about winning in the long term. And sometimes winning in the long term is sacrificing in the short term. Okay. So in this case, these are conversations you have. Mrs. Smith, these are our manufacturers who we work with. This is the scenario we have. Now, we have the ability to source some of this stuff locally. It's not that it's bad. We never work with bad stuff, Mrs. Smith, but it's not the normal, specific stuff that we use. In this case, it will allow us to get the work done quicker, and we're going to still stand behind everything that we do. But we want you to know there's some things that might be a little bit of difference. And from a production standpoint, this is big box versus specialty stuff, and so there is a difference in the quality. Now the price will be adjusted a little bit, but we want to make sure we meet your expectations. So is it more important for you to get a good quality job done at a good price quicker, or do you want the highest quality job done at a good price with a little further out the line? Right. So those are the conversations you have. So by the way, I'm a weird guy. I role play kind of like this just by myself. And so people get to know me like, Dave, why are you just role playing with yourself? Well, that's just the culture that I try to build. Any organization I work with, that's the culture we want to have. So we never want a salesperson to come in. Well, what'd you say? Well, I told her that. No. Mrs. Smith, you want them instantly to get into the point where you're hearing what they're actually saying, not them giving you the play-by-play. Does that make sense? Because that's how you coach and teach. So whenever I'm with salespeople, I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that. I'm Mr. Jones. What did you say to Mr. Jones?
Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic stuff, Dave. Some really big takeaways. Number one, always be building your bench. Always be building your bench. Yep. Always be recruiting, even if you're not hiring at the moment. Number two, highest value
activity as an owner you can do. It is.
Yep. Also, ADL, average dollar per lead run, is the number one sales metric to pay attention to. That will give you the truest insight to how your team is actually performing. And then I think what was your last big takeaway here? Oh yeah, just managing role playing. I think honestly, because so many of these answers here can be taken care of by role playing. It's such a
Culture of role playing. Yep.
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
fantastic. Thank you. So that was Dave talking about sales and operations. Thank you, Dave. We're going to shift gears now, and of course, have the chat open. I'm going to introduce Bruce Dell. Bruce, as I mentioned, is the COO of StructureM. He's overseeing a team of marketers that have been doing this for many, many years. And our clients grow on average from 15 to 50% per year in revenue. And so he's overseeing a program that really works. And he's actually been brought in by James Hardy to corporate headquarters in Chicago on several occasions to teach and train the Hardy reps on how they can support and help contractors grow their company. So Bruce is going to, and again, the format here is that we're throwing out there the questions that came up in the survey. Bruce is going to address those. If you have others along the way, put them in the chat. But Bruce, go ahead and take us away.
All righty then. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Dave. That was excellent. I've heard a lot of that all, before as we've done other workshops, but I just eat it up every time. It's fantastic stuff. So I'm excited to talk today about marketing and share some of the insights that we have really learned over the past 9 years. We've been serving many home improvement contractors over the last 9 years. And in fact, our second client was a James Hardy contractor. And so we've learned a lot over this time. We've seen a lot over this time. And so excited to share some of that today. We got some fantastic questions back when we asked it in the survey. And so the 4 questions that I'll be going over today is how to get better traction in your neighborhood. So if you're doing a job in your neighborhood, how do you get better traction there? How to improve the quality of your social media, how to get leads from social media. We'll be talking about that. And the other one is how to get more affordable leads. And that's a big topic that we'll touch on briefly. And then the last question we got is how to get more consistent results from your marketing. And so a great question, which is the one that we're gonna jump into first. So yeah, how to get consistent results in your marketing. And excellent question that is something I could probably talk on for about 2 hours. But 3 fundamental things come to mind when I think about this. The first one is you really want to start with a strong foundation. And a strong foundation means a clear message and identity that differentiates you. That's the core, what I would say to marketing. The second thing is you really want to build a strong reputation as you go. And then the third thing is to have a strategic, holistic approach to marketing, looking at the whole system, not just these little tactics and chasing the silver bullet around. So I want to touch on each one of these really quickly. And the first one that I mentioned here was to build a strong identity and to differentiate yourself. So a good question to ask yourself when you're looking at this, when maybe you're evaluating this, maybe you're starting out and you're still fairly small and you're trying to establish this, is asking yourself, do you talk about the problem that you help customers solve? Is that one of the main things that you talk about in your website? The other question we always look at is, do you place more emphasis on the outcome that a customer really wants versus your own qualifications? So in other words, do you focus on what the customer is? And when you can shift your messaging and your identity to really cater for what the customer wants versus what you are offering, we say that being a game changer because it's such a refreshing thing. People are, customers have their own journey. They are going through their own thing. And so if you can relate to their journey, you can relate to what they're looking for more clearly, then we see that helps you stand out. And the second part of this is to help differentiate yourself, standing up from the competition. Most contractors sound like just every other contractor. If you look online, and I pulled up 10 websites, you would probably see 8 out of 10 that say exactly the same thing. Tell me if this sounds familiar. We're BBB accredited. We're the best in insert city name. We've been in business for 30 years. we value honesty and service. What does any of that mean? Everyone says the same thing. And so differentiating yourself is really asking some hard questions of yourself, of your team, of your leadership, of your company. And it's questions that are, what makes you different than your competitor? What makes you better than your competitor? And digging into those, because a lot of times those questions can often, have some kind of surface level questions, but continue to dig into those. Like, why does that matter? If whatever the case is, if it's, this is what makes us different, why does that matter to the customer? Why should they care about that? And then what is more value? How do you provide more value than a competitor? So basically you're asking yourself, why should a customer hire you over a competitor? Even though you may charge more, why should they choose you? And then once you develop that differentiation and identity, then you need to put it everywhere on your website, on your ads, to help you stand out and explain, as I said before, why that's important to them. So one of the things that we often see on websites with James Hardy is it'll say, we're James Hardy Elite Preferred, and they leave it at that. What does that mean? What does that mean for the customer? Why should they care about that? Explain that to them so they know. And so that's a little bit of how to differentiate yourself. At the end, we're going to give away a freebie, which is a guide that we put together last year, is how to develop your unique value and how to differentiate yourself from the competition. The next part that I talked about a little bit was regarding having a holistic approach to marketing. We put this guide together last year, a labor of love, and it's a fantastic guide that really looks at the overall strategy of your marketing. It's really our secret source of what we've learned over the last 9 years working with specifically siding contractors, but home improvement contractors as well. And the nice thing about this book is it goes into a multitude of different levels of marketing, and it helps you build a lasting, consistent marketing machine for your company. It looks at your messaging. It looks at your website. What are the core components of your website? What kind of content should you be producing that will help you rank on Google and get SEO value? How to get better reviews, how to get the most out of paid ads, and then how to put that all together into measurable results that you can track. And so we'll share this guide with you at the end as well. We'll send out a link so you can download it, take a look at it. And then my main piece of advice with it is to have someone on your team. If you really want consistent marketing results, you need somebody on your team who's dedicated to marketing. And it may be a company you hire, it may be a person on your team, but someone who can own the whole thing. A lot of times what we see when contractors come to us is they'll say, yeah, I have a web guy and I have a PPC guy and I have an SEO guy. And there's all these guys, this guy, my cousin working out of the basement, or this, whatever the case is. And they're not talking to each other. They're disjointed, and then wondering why they're getting not consistent results. No one's bringing that all together. And so having a company that can oversee this whole thing, or a person who really sees the bigger picture and then can be held accountable to the results that your marketing can go. Because when you have all these guys in the PPC guys saying, well, it's a website problem, that's the thing. Website's going, no, it's an SEO thing. And no one takes ownership. And so having a company that can do that and can be held accountable to your marketing results is key. All right, I want to move quickly to the next question. Again, trying to get all these questions in that everyone had. The second question we had was how to get better neighborhood traction. So assuming you're working on a job in a neighborhood and really wanting to get better results in the surrounding areas. And so, some of the things that we recommend, and a lot of these would be very familiar, is to make sure you have a strong presence, physical presence in that neighborhood when you're doing a job. What does that mean? That means having clear and compelling signage on the job. It means that you're maybe sending letters to the neighbors with, a great letter that's formulated well, saying, hey, we're working in the neighborhood, we're working next door, really apologize for the noise and the dust. And you may want to put a fun little gift in there. We have contractors who put a pair of earplugs in there if they're a roofer. They're, sorry for the noise and do that. But it's, again, what's that doing is it's creating a little bit of rapport with the neighbors. Radius mailers, hyper-targeted radius mailers are a fantastic thing as well. And you can see really good results as long as you can track those, and there's tracking involved, is a good idea. And then two other ideas regarding referrals is to ask. Nextdoor is a popular website for a number of different areas, and the popularity varies. But asking the homeowner, are you on Nextdoor? Would you give us a recommendation? Because good chances that your neighbors are on that. Or even asking for referrals. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, are there any neighbors in your area that could benefit from our services? Get that referral then and have that conversation. And then the final piece, which we don't see many contractors doing, but we've seen fantastic results, is to couple this with a digital strategy. So if you're working on a job, go and do a hyper-targeted ad on Facebook, on Google, that just is targeting that neighborhood, because now they're getting a 1-2 punch. They're seeing you, they're hearing you, and now they're seeing you online. And so a geo-targeted ad, which you can, on Facebook, you can hyper-target to the mile, or on Google, but we've seen great results with Facebook. And what we do is we follow up with having a great before and after picture, a few images, or maybe we've done a video on that job, and it looks something like, it could look something like this. This went out just to the surrounding area, and it was a slideshow that we'd put together, and it's a lot of people recognized the home. It was on a prominent street, and it was a great second follow-up to that presence. And so that's a great idea too, with regards to getting more traction in your neighborhood. Hope I answered that question. All right, moving along. The third question we got, similar to the other one in terms of social media, is just how to generate more leads from social media. Social media is one of those things that we get a mixed bag from our contractors with when they come on board. Some people have no idea. They just listen, we haven't touched our Facebook page in years, and you can tell you'll wipe the dust off when you take it over. Others do a pretty good job, but they just winging it. We have no idea what we're doing. We're just posting random things, kittens saying happy Easter, whatever the case is. And so they have no idea what they're doing. And so the first and foremost thing you want to do is just to have a clear strategy and plan. What do you want to do on Facebook? What do you want to get out of it? What are the goals? What is the type of content? What do you want this to look like is essentially what you're going for. And then the second one is to sign it to someone, have it part of their role, whether it be someone on your team, a third-party company. But another thing that we often see is people like, oh yeah, sometimes we just have random people posting, or my daughter-in-law, she posts every now and again, and it's no one's responsibility. And so assign it to somebody, and then utilize Facebook ads effectively is a great way to generate leads. And so social media really can be done fairly inexpensively, and to start off with, I would say that's a great thing. Having somebody on your team who can post 2 to 3 times a week. It really doesn't need to be a once-a-day thing. It can really be a few times a week, but very intentional and consistent is the key. Consistency definitely is better than just a blast and then they don't hear from you for 3 months. And before and after pictures or videos of jobs are fantastic content that drive people back to your website. Great content there. And then also boosting posts. The reality is Facebook is in the advertising business. And so just organic posting a lot of times doesn't get the eyeballs on it. So if you have a really good post, like a before and after picture of an area, pay $5, $10 to boost that, very targeted to those neighborhoods or and to the demographic that you're wanting to target, can go a long way. And then a little bit more, obviously going back to the Facebook ads, is really look at that. We've seen great results with targeted Facebook ads. either through retargeting, they've come to the website and now you're following them on Facebook, or for geo-targeted ads, hyperlocal ads. And so the left one here is just an example of just a Facebook post that we boost with a really good before and after picture. And then the one on the right is a Facebook lead ad that we follow up with. And again, putting our value, we have 0% financing. That's a segue. If you're not offering financing, you really should. But have a good offer there. And then this is a lead ad that they click on, and a form pops up right there and then, and they enter it in. And so the results from Facebook lead ads, as long as they are targeted to the right audience, is fantastic. So hope that answers that question about getting more leads from social media and from Facebook. And then the last question that we got from the survey was how to obtain affordable leads. And the key word here is affordable. You can get leads and leads can be very expensive, but if you're looking for affordable leads, you need to know what that is. What does affordable mean to you? And so my main recommendation to contractors is to know your number per service. What is that amount for siding? What is that amount for windows that you are willing to pay for an ideal window client? You need to know what is your typical your margin and value on that job, on a typical siding job. And then you can work out from there, what is a lead worth to you in that? And once you know that number and you can then track the results, you're able to then make those better decisions about what is affordable and what isn't. And then what is affordable, doing more of that, or maybe what's on the fringe, making changes to become more affordable, and then avoiding those ones that are just clearly out there. Often we find that contractors don't have a good idea. And so they're either winging it, or they get a sense of, I don't think those leads were very expensive. How do you know? Just a sense. And once you're able to track an ROI, return on investment, you're then able to make those better decisions. It can really take one lead from a specific source to pay for that ad. We had that with a client who had a very small budget, and we did Google ads. And the 1 month, they only got one lead from those Google ads. I think they only spent about $300, $400. But that lead was for a huge commercial job that paid 4 times over for what they invested. And so they were like, we only got one lead, but that lead was magic. Now, obviously, you want to continue to get a ROI over time, not just a one month and call it that, but really being able to track that. But if you know your ROI, and part of that is knowing exactly which leads come from which sources, and that's the tracking part that is key, and that's closing the loop in terms of going back and making sure that you're attributing whatever sales to those leads and the lead sources. Most times, contractors just get numbers. Maybe they advertise with Google ads, or they'll do Facebook ads or something, and they say, "Oh, we got 5 leads from that. Which were those leads?" We don't know. They just get told 5 leads, and this is your cost per lead, but they have no idea who those leads were. And so once you're able to know the exact leads, you're able to measure this back and know what your return on investment is per lead source. And as I said, it's having someone in your team that can close the loop, whether it be from phone calls or whatever, asking, how did you hear about us, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? Because often you get that answer, oh, Google or internet, and digging deeper and using the tracking and the metrics and the reporting that you have set up to know where those lead sources are. And then the last piece on this is to give feedback to your advertising partners on those leads quality. As a provider of paid advertising, we do PPC through Google ads, Bing ads, Facebook. We are desperate for that feedback on the closing the loop. We want to know what was the quality of those leads, because we can make adjustments. We can tweak things to get your better quality leads. But when you don't get that back, and all we do, we're able to see numbers, we're able to make such better advancements and adjustments to improve quality of leads from our contractors. And the second part to this is then getting more of those affordable leads is through Google Ads, Facebook Ads, and Google Local Services. We're getting fantastic results with a lot of our clients in all of these areas because, again, we're able to close that loop on reporting and making those adjustments. So if you're doing Google Ads, make sure that that is to a company or someone who's actually dedicated to helping improve those results. It's definitely not a set it and forget it type of platform. And it's not a platform that you want to let Google optimize for you. You're going to get phone call after phone call. We hear them all the time. This is so-and-so from Google. We've got recommendations on your campaign. Yeah, I bet you do. My recommendation is spend more with us, make these things and, make these adjustments. You want to have a company that's looking at that and is being held accountable to those results for you to be able to generate those leads. Again, Facebook ads, definitely retargeting is foundational, and lead ads is very effective as well. And then the last one here is Google guaranteed or local service ads. This is new on Google. It's been around for a while, but siding has relatively new opened up on the siding jobs. But you'll see this in various areas when you do a local search for something like siding contractor, roofing contractor, windows installation, and it's the local service ads at the top. And these are pay-per-lead ads. They're not pay-per-click ads. They're you only get charged if that's a lead. And they're qualified leads. These are people that, because you have to be qualified to be on there, there's high intent when it comes to a lot of the leads that we're seeing come from Google guaranteed ads. And they're exclusive as well. So that's what I meant to say. They're exclusive ads. It's not like some of these platforms that send an ad to 4 or 5 different contractors and you've got to bid against each other. They choose you and they only get sent to you. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with local service ads, but check it out. Let us know if you have any questions. But because it's new, the competition's low. And so we're seeing cost per lead for really good leads being at around $60 to $80 in some markets. And so for a good siding lead, I think you would take that all day long. And so now is definitely the time to act. You don't want to be on the tail end of this when competition gets blown out of the water with local service ads. So thank you very much. This is my email address. It's bruce@structurem.com. Would love to hear from you. Please reach out if you have any follow-up questions or anything you want explained further, what I presented to you. And love to hear from you. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate that. Feel free to throw questions in the chat. I am going to go ahead and jump into our next and final panelist for today, Jeff Prager. I'll just share my screen just to intro Jeff a little bit. Jeff is a remarkable individual. He is the co-founder of the CFO Project. He's, as I mentioned, been a CPA for over 40 years. He's an owner, CEO. He's owned multiple businesses and gotten fantastic results in those businesses, exited successfully. For example, Strauss Homes from 0 to 26 million. They're the second largest privately held builder in Colorado. Gateway American Properties from 0 to 150 million. One of the founding partner of Ashworth Golf, clothing and accessories, which is fantastic, from startup to a public firm. And he's also authored several books, The Peddler's Son, Financial Forecasting in Excel, Managing Your Business with 17 Numbers. He's also an adjunct professor at Colorado University, Denver. And so wonderful to have you on, Jeff. Jeff is going to talk about cash flow. He's going to talk about how to make more money and keep it. And so, Jeff, I'll stop sharing here. Why don't you go ahead and jump in? And you're muted at the moment. Jeff, you're still muted. There we go.
How about now?
Gotcha.
Okay, the unfortunate part about being the last is I'm stuck with a little bit compressed time, but I want to thank you all for being here. I appreciate the professionalism of the James Hardy Group, and I enjoy working with Will's group and David's group, and just want you to know that. So let me start with, what is a CFO? A CFO is a chief financial officer. All great big companies, Microsoft, Apple, they all have them. And we as a CFO have only one goal: to help you make more money. Now, the problem is that these services have never been available to companies like yours, but we figured out a way around it. But again, when we say make more money, what we're dealing with is money that you could spend any way you please, not revenue, not profit. We're talking about discretionary cash in the bank. Let me get my slides going. So I'm going to answer 4 questions if I have enough time. And the first one is that we got from the surveys. Why am I working harder and making less? So that's the first question I want to answer. Second one is, how come I never have money in the bank when I need it? The third is, what can I do to reduce my collection problems? And the fourth is, I'm losing customers because of backlog. What can I do? So the first question is, why do I work harder and not make any money? Now, there are usually 3 reasons. The first is there's not enough money in the bank, and there never seems to be enough money in the bank. In reality, you may have one of 2 problems. One is not enough profit, but profit is not the same as cash flow. So I want to address that. But the challenge is, if you don't have enough profit, how do you generate cash flow? And what are my next steps to generate positive cash flow? The second is, you're not a financial expert, and you probably don't want to be one. In fact, you may never want to look at your financial statements. But here's the reality. Financial statements don't tell you the whole story. Plus, your bookkeeper and accountant deal in the past. They're not paid to help you go forward and improve profit and cash flow. The third problem is you might be in a catch-22. To grow, you need more money, but to get more money, you need to grow. So the natural way out is working harder and doing more yourself. And that gets into a vicious cycle, because I truly believe the harder I work, the less money I make. But when you solve the cash flow problem, it's usually easier to solve all your other problems. And a CFO, here's a little saying, there's a reason your windshield is bigger than your rear view mirror. Where you're headed is more important than what you left behind. Now, your CFO, your CPA, and your accountant may be telling you where you've been and where you are. But your goal is to have a roadmap to where you want to get to. And that's what we do. We look at the whole business funnel, from lead generation to cash in the bank, to help you go forward. But the reality is, financial statements don't tell you the whole story. So here are what we found are the 8 key drivers for financial freedom. One is your number of leads. And that's where Will's group is phenomenal, is generating quality leads that are ready to be closed on. The second is sales conversion rate. Again, why Dave's here. You want to be able to take quality leads and close more of those per salesperson at a higher dollar value. Number 3 is your customer retention rate. And that's how long do you keep that customer going? Are you a one and done? Or do you develop a relationship so that 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, they're calling you and or are referring you to their friends? The fourth is the number of transactions per customer. What can you do? What kind of change orders? What kind of upsells? What other things do you have in your quiver so that you can upsell your average transaction? That gets to your average price per transaction. How do you increase it? Because there's a relationship between these 5 which generate revenue. These 5 are the only ways to generate more revenue. Now, once you generate revenue, that's where your accountants finally step in, after the horse has left the barn. So number 1 is, how do you generate more gross profit? Gross profit is revenue minus your variable cost is gross profit. Now, to focus on that, what you have to do is focus about, number 1, your inputs, less labor costs, less material cost, less supplies, whatever it may be. Those are input. Now, the second thing is input cost. How much does it cost you for that subcontractor? And Dave gave you a great way to lower those costs. And number 3 is, how do you use systems and technology to increase the throughput or velocity of doing that job? You don't really cut cost. You just make things more efficient so that your gross margin or your dollars per transaction go down. Then you have net profit. Now, from gross profit, you take away salaries, marketing cost, overhead, and that gives you net profit. Now, the problem is profit and cash flow are 2 different things, which gets me into question number 2. How do I get cash when I need it? So there are 2 ways to get money in your company. One is internally, and the other one is externally. Internally is by running your organization more profitably and being able to anticipate cash needs before you have to spend it. Externally is how we could grow and drive super growth. That's your banks or equity. There's not a lot of magic to this stuff, and you have the common sense. But let's talk about internally, which over the long term has got to be the way you increase the money in your bank. Now, here's the disconnect. Here's a huge one. And I learned this when I started running my building companies, is the way I ran my building companies, if I thought like an accountant, it would have bankrupted me. So let's talk about how we think as business owners versus how your accountant thinks. There are 3 ways to get money into your company. One is through the sale of your products and services. One is through raising money through debt, and the other one is getting equity, usually your own money. How many of you want to put more money into your company? Not me. I want to take out more, right? So here's how we spend money: through your variable cost, your cost of goods sold, okay, your overhead, and your salaries. And by the way, you should be number 1 here. The other ways money leaks out is when you buy machinery and equipment, or pay dividends, or pay back debt. Now that's it. If the money's coming in faster than it's going out, there's more money for you and you're happier. Would you agree? The more money left in your company to spend any way you will is a good thing. But you see this dotted line? This is why accountants can't talk to you, because they take some of your cash in and some of your cash out, and that goes on your profit and loss. That measures profit, but that's not cash. And some of your cash in and some of your cash out is on your balance sheet. And regardless of the size of your company, very few companies pay attention to the balance sheet. But the bottom line is, the language you speak is not the same as the language your financial people are speaking. And that's why you're so confused. Let me give you an example. Suppose you have revenue of 600,000. It could be 6 million. It could be 60 million. It could be 600 million. Doesn't make any difference. And your profit is 30 grand. And you're going, oh my God, I made 30 grand. Well, the first thing is cash is leaking because you got to pay taxes. And in a lot of companies, unless you're corporations, taxes aren't even showing up on your balance sheet or your income statement because you're an S corporation, a partnership, or a sole proprietorship. They're not showing up. So right off the bat, of that 30 grand, you only have 18. Now, let's make it worse. Your receivables increased over the year by $41,000. That means there's $41,000 of sales that you haven't collected. So now of your $30,000 profit, you're 23 grand in the hole. How many of you have ever had your accountant tell you you made X dollars and you go, oh my gosh, if I did, then where's the money? Why is it not in my bank account? Well, there's another leakage too, and that's paying your principal. Interest shows up in your overhead, but the principal repayment does not. So of the 30 grand, you have now lost approximately $33,000. That is a swing of $63,000. That's the disconnect because you're listening to your accountant. Accountants, for the most part, have never owned their own business and don't know how to help you. That's the difference between coins in the bank and a graph. Second way to raise money is externally. Now, whether you do it through raising money and or debt, these people are looking at you differently. They are looking at the financial statements, your financial strength. And I'm going to go fast because of the time constraint, but I want to cover as much as I can. So the bottom line with this slide is they don't look at you the way you look at you. You may think you have a great business, but can you convince them? Plus, they're looking at 5 things that you may not be: your character, your commitment, your management experience, your integrity. Number 2, your capacity to pay them back. They're looking at cash flow, and they're looking at it the way you would look at it as an owner. How much your cash is coming in and going out. Then they're looking at your capital, your net worth, and they're asking the question, how much pain can you take before you cannot pay me back? Very self-centered. Then they're saying, if you can't pay me back, what additional collateral do I have to make sure you do? And then finally, the conditions, the economic conditions, the political, technological, and social. What's going on with your consumer? But here's the key concept. When do you go for third-party money is when you don't need it. Now, there's one exception to that rule, and every time I say it, I see Will chuckle. You could borrow money from friends, family, and fools. So if you want money, you've got to ask for it before you need it. And that means you have to have a financial projection. And let me boil that down. It sounds really sophisticated. It doesn't have to be. You could do it on a napkin, literally. But what you want to do is show them when you're going to need the money, when you're going to collect that money back, and how they're going to get repaid, and what's going to happen if you can't. Those are the 4 questions you need to answer. Now let me get to collections. Okay? Before you even look at my slide, let me give you the key idea here. It's easier to collect money when your clients need you versus after you've already completed the work. That's the bottom line of this slide. So, You need to stay ahead of your cost. You need to get as much upfront as possible. You need to get progress payments as close before you start or as close to providing the service. Try to match when you have to pay the money out with when you do the draw or the progress payment. You want to collect on change orders at the time of signing, and you want to create 2 draws from the final draw or progress payment. One is on substantial completion, so that you've got your money plus some profit, and then completion of the punch list. But the key is to close out jobs quickly. And I can't tell you my war stories because I don't have enough time. But if you're interested, I'll show you how to contact me before I leave. The last question is the large backlog. So I'm going to approach this differently than Dave or Will. And what I'm going to say is, if you have a 20% gross profit margin, which covers your cost, your fixed cost, and your profit, your variable cost, then your break even is 600,000. So you're working very hard and you're creating a backlog. But what if you raised your prices, thereby raising your gross profit margin? And if you could raise that by 10%, the amount of money you have to sell, instead of 600, you only need $400,000 worth of jobs. That's a 30% reduction in the amount of jobs you need to make the same money. Or you could sell more and have profit hitting sooner than it would under the old scenario. So those are just some key concepts that when you look at your financial information in tandem with your marketing information and your sales information, you could stop putting out fires and spend more time with the freedom you will gain by running your business like a CEO, by the numbers instead of by the seat of your pants. So I'm going to finish up, but your goal is here's the problem. It takes money to keep working, operating. And you have only one objective, which is to make more money. And that's what we're here to do, is help you look at those numbers, make sense of those numbers, and use numbers to run your business more effectively. If you'd like a call with me, you could go to the cfoproject.com/rightfit. And then in the follow-up email, you're going to get a free link to my book, which is Make More Money, the business owner's 5-step plan for bringing home more cash. So I hit my goal of 20 minutes. I am sorry that I had to go so fast, but I want to thank you all. I want to thank James Hardy. I want to thank Will and Dave for the opportunity to be with you today.
Fantastic, Jeff. Such big key takeaways. Number one, the harder you work, the less you make. And the only way to fix that is by higher profit margins that give you the cash flow to actually fix a lot of the problems that you're facing. And so the profit margin is going to come from a couple of things: fixing your operations, sales and operational pieces. And then also it's a marketing thing. How can you go up against a competitor, charge more, but have a customer still want to work with you, even though competitors are charging less? And the way to do that is to take a position in their mind that your company is more valuable to them, which is some of the branding and messaging pieces that Bruce was sharing. So thank you, Jeff. That's fantastic stuff. I know we're winding up here at the top of the hour. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. I'm going to wait a second. And while I'm waiting for you, I want to let you know that in the email that Hillary is going to send out later on, there'll be a link to a free strategy session. It is not a sales pitch. It is a time for you to get an objective perspective on your business and get some input and advice from people who have seen a lot and done a lot in your particular vertical of in this case, siding installation, replacement contracting. And so happy to set you up with a call. Hillary will reach out to you and set that up if you're interested. You'll also get the copy of Jeff's book and also the unique value guide that Bruce had mentioned. Thank you so much, everybody, for all of your time today. I don't see any questions at the moment, so have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. And thank you again, Brian. Appreciate you hopping on today, and all your contractors, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.